I always imagined my wedding day would be magical, elegant, joyful, and unmistakably mine. Instead, it became the day I finally showed my family who I really was. But to understand what happened that night, you have to know where it all began. I'm Emma Chen, born and raised under the weight of my father's towering expectations. Harrison Chen wasn't just a businessman, he was a legend, a self-made mogul who turned Chen Technologies into a multi-million-dollar powerhouse. In our house, dinner conversations weren't about school or feelings, they were about quarterly growth, international expansion, and legacy. His legacy. One I was never meant to be part of. Business is in our blood, he'd proclaim, eyes glowing with pride as he looked at my older brother, Marcus. Then, without fail, he'd add, well, most of our blood. Cue the side glance in my direction, sharp enough to slice through bone. While Marcus climbed the corporate ladder exactly as expected, Wharton, MBA, corner office, I chose something different, computer engineering. When I told my father, his response was almost theatrical in its disappointment. Engineers work for people like us, Emma, they don't lead companies. What he couldn't see was what I saw, an industry shifting beneath his feet. While he doubled down on boardroom politics and dated hierarchies, I saw the future being written in code. I graduated top of my class. He didn't show up. He was at Marcus's MBA ceremony instead. That's a real milestone, he said when I called to tell him. I spent the next 3 years buried in startup chaos, working 80-hour weeks, bouncing between roles, absorbing everything from UI design to seed funding strategies. To him, I was floundering. Still playing with your little projects? He'd ask, smirking over roasted duck at family dinners. Marcus just got promoted to VP. What he didn't know, what no one knew, was that I was building something real. It started in the cramped second bedroom of my apartment, a dynamic cybersecurity platform that could detect and evolve against threats in real time. While Marcus was sipping scotch with board members, I was up past midnight debugging algorithms, living off cold coffee and ambition. Then came the breakthrough. A modest VC firm took a chance on me. Their funding helped me hire 2 engineers and rent a shoebox office downtown. My mother, quietly supportive in her own way, helped me furnish it. I don't fully understand what you're building, she said while we wrestled with an IKEA desk, but I've never seen you this alive. I named it Secure Core Technologies. And over the next 2 years, it grew faster than I could have imagined. First, a mid-sized bank, then a second client, then a quiet contract from a government agency. I said nothing at family dinners. I let them believe I was still the lost daughter, the one who never quite measured up. I smiled through Marcus's victory toasts and played dumb when relatives asked how my computer hobby was going. Then I met David. He was nothing like the men my father approved of. A visionary architect who saw beauty in blueprints and spoke about the future like it was something we could sculpt with our own hands. He didn't care about my last name. Didn't even recognize it, at first. You're a Chen, he asked, surprised. You're not what I expected from, well, one of those families. We fell in love over deep conversations about innovation, creation, and what it means to truly build something lasting. When he proposed, I didn't hesitate. But my father? Of course, he had an opinion. An architect, he said, frowning over his wine glass. Couldn't you have found someone in finance, a real profession with real potential? He's designing the new downtown development, I replied, holding my voice steady. He waved a dismissive hand. A glorified contractor. At least Marcus married well. Catherine's father owns a company on the NYSE. I glanced at Catherine, polished, poised, perfect, the ideal corporate wife. And for a moment, I felt sorry for her. Planning the wedding turned into a war zone. My father tried to turn it into a shareholders' mixer, complete with a curated guest list of CEOs and VPs. He wanted it to be a showcase. But I had other plans. My mother tried to play peacemaker, gently urging compromise, but in the end, she deferred to him, just like always. Even Marcus pulled me aside at the office one afternoon. Just let Dad have his way, he said, you know how he gets, and it's not like you're footing the bill. But I was. Every single expense, from the floral arrangements to the champagne, was paid for by Secure Core's profits. Not that anyone knew. What they also didn't know was that Secure Core had just gone public, quietly, successfully. My stake in the company, worth $89 million. And that wasn't even the biggest secret I was keeping. 3 months before the wedding, during a routine audit of potential government clients, I stumbled on something interesting. Chen Technologies, the very company my father built his identity around, had glaring cybersecurity weaknesses. The kind of vulnerabilities my software was specifically designed to prevent. I could have warned them. Instead, I watched. Through my networks, I monitored as small breaches occurred, nothing catastrophic, just enough to rattle nerves and shake confidence. Enough to drop the stock price. And while the board scrambled and my father raged behind closed doors, I made my move. Through a chain of shell corporations, I quietly bought up shares. Lots of them. By the week of the wedding, I held 22% of Chen Technologies. My father had no idea that the daughter he called a failure now had the power to unseat him. The wedding day arrived, warm breeze, cloudless sky, everything picture perfect. The ceremony was intimate, heartfelt, exactly as David and I had dreamed. But the real event was the reception, because that was when my father planned to speak. I sat at the head table, fingers laced with David's beneath the white linen, and watched my father rise, champagne glass in hand. He wore his finest Tom Ford suit, the one reserved for mergers, acquisitions, and million-dollar deals. The crowd quieted as he walked to the microphone, all eyes on him. And I could see it, hidden behind the polished grin and rehearsed tone, his need to reclaim the spotlight. When Emma was born, he began, voice confident and smooth, I had such high hopes. He glanced around the room like a keynote speaker addressing his shareholders. The Chen family has always been built on vision. My father founded a modest business. I turned it into an empire, and now my son Marcus, he gestured grandly, is carrying that torch forward. Marcus gave a proud, practiced nod. My father paused, swirling the champagne in his glass. But Emma chose her own way. He said it like it was a punchline. She ignored the family's wisdom and went into, he smirked, computer programming, the kind of job meant for employees, not leaders. There were polite chuckles. Catherine, ever the dutiful trophy wife, let out a delicate laugh, quickly stifled behind her napkin. And now she's married an architect, he continued, a man who, at least, will build the walls real executives work inside. David tensed beside me, starting to rise. I gently squeezed his hand. Not yet. My father's smile thinned into something colder. Some people, he said, his voice dropping just enough to draw in the room, just aren't destined for greatness, and that's okay. Every empire has its disappointments. He looked straight at me. And Emma has always been ours. The silence that followed was different. Heavy, awkward, even the most loyal business associates didn't know whether to applaud or sip their drinks. My mother stared into her lap. Marcus looked quietly smug. I rose. The fabric of my wedding gown whispered as I stood, calm and poised. Thank you, Dad, I said, for those heartfelt words. I think it's only fair I say a few of my own. I nodded discreetly to Michael, my CTO, disguised for the day as our wedding photographer. He tapped a key on his laptop. The oversized screens around the reception hall, my father's pride, installed for his upcoming, visionary, presentation, flickered to life. What is this? My father snapped, his voice echoing too loudly across the room. But then he saw the screen. And for the first time in my life, I watched Harrison Chen go speechless. On the screens behind him appeared Secure Core's financials, impressive revenue charts, climbing stock prices, and, most importantly, my name tied to an $89 million stake. You see, Dad, I said, my voice steady and measured, while you were grooming Marcus to inherit your empire, I was quietly building my own, Secure Core Technologies. I paused, letting the names sink in. Some guests gasped, others leaned in. Maybe you've heard of us. We developed the adaptive cybersecurity systems now used by most major banks and government agencies. Across the room, my father's face had drained of color. Marcus was already on his phone, fingers flying across the screen. But that's not all, I continued. 3 months ago, during a routine audit, we uncovered significant vulnerabilities in Chen Technologies' infrastructure, vulnerabilities that could cripple a company if exploited. I gave Michael a subtle nod. The screen changed, SEC filings, shell company documents, board meeting minutes, graphs showing my growing stake in Chen Technologies. I could have warned you, I said, stepping away from the head table, walking slowly toward him, but I didn't. I watched, as minor breaches occurred, as your stock dipped, as panic set in. I stopped in front of him. And then, I bought in, quietly, strategically. Realization spread across his face like a slow burn. No, he whispered. Yes, I said, smiling. As of this morning, I own 22% of Chen Technologies. I let the silence stretch. And tomorrow, that number goes up, because tonight, several long-serving board members are stepping down, and they've already agreed to sell their shares to me. Marcus shot to his feet, knocking over his champagne. You can't do this. She can't do this, Dad. Actually, I can, I said, turning to the room, and I have. I addressed the stunned guests, the business elite who had come for a wedding and found themselves at a hostile takeover. Ladies and gentlemen, I said, I'm proud to announce that, effective tomorrow, Secure Core Technologies will begin a full merger with Chen Technologies. The screens lit up again, merger terms, branding mock-ups, integration timelines. We'll be modernizing infrastructure, implementing our systems, and bringing the company into the 21st century. My father finally spoke, voice rough. You planned this, all of it. I looked him straight in the eye. I learned from you. Identify weaknesses, exploit opportunities, don't reveal your hand, until you're ready to win. The room erupted. Business reporters, once here for a society wedding, now rushed to break the story of the year. David rose and took my hand, beaming. Ready to face the cameras, Mr. Chen? I asked. He grinned. Lead the way, Mrs. Chen Pierce, CEO of Secure Core Technologies. The aftermath. The merger dominated headlines. Every major business outlet covered it, the disowned daughter who took over her father's empire. Secure Core's stock soared. Chen Technologies' reputation rebounded, fueled by innovation, not nostalgia. Marcus was reassigned to a quiet advisory role. And my father? He stayed on the board, but he no longer led. Now, he listened. At our first post-merger board meeting, I slid a proposal across the table. This is the new security upgrade plan, I said. I'll need your signature by day's end. He looked at me, something like respect, or resignation, settling behind his eyes. You really did it, he said quietly. You built something remarkable. I met his gaze. I did, without your money, without your approval, without following your path. And that, I added, is what bothers you most. He said nothing, just signed the papers. At the door, he paused. Your mother wants you to come to dinner Sunday. I smiled. I'll be there, and Dad, this time, I'll give the toast. 1 year later, Chen, Secure Core Technologies is now valued at over $3 billion. My father still attends board meetings, he even asks questions now. Marcus found his footing running a boutique consulting firm. Turns out, he's better at offering advice than making decisions. My mother? She finally speaks up at family dinners. David and I bought a penthouse overlooking the city, but I kept the old apartment where it all began. Some nights, I go there, sit at the same desk, code in the quiet. The press calls it a revenge story. But it's not. It's about vision. About building something that's yours. About proving you don't need to follow someone else's blueprint to succeed. Just last week, my father asked my opinion on a new tech investment. You see things differently, he said. You see the future. I looked out from the office, my office, once his. No, Dad, I said. I don't just see the future. I build it. And that's worth more than any legacy he ever planned to leave me.